You're actually, Austin, hitting on something. So it hasn't been that bad in Britain in terms of the impact. But when you were using language,
basically, they're down 5%. I mean,
no,
what do you mean it hasn't been that bad?
I meant because they're not on. They've done well in terms of recovery from the crisis, and their immigration problems have not been, or the problems with migrants haven't been as bad as other European nations. But I will hit on something when you were talking about this vote and the language you were using. It essentially sounds like these are just petulant children who are throwing temper tantrums, and that's kind of what you've heard from some of the leaders there and other places talking about people who wanted to exit the EU. And it kind of talks down to people, and I think that's part of the bigger problem. Although Britain maybe isn't as bad off as other European nations, when you have people of power talking to the little folks that way, it makes them mad.
Yeah. Like, you're going to the end of the line if you vote this way.
Right.
Well, hold on. You're mixing up a few things. I agree on the tone of the leaders in the UK. The president going to the UK and saying you're going to the back of the line, what he was saying was a very specific thing, which is we've got a TPP. They're trying to negotiate a free trade agreement with Europe. You can't think, if you're the UK, that it's going to be immediately easy to just jump to the front and say, oh, okay, well, we've sorted it out. Here's the free trade agreement we want. It's going to take probably years to negotiate all of the details of such a free trade agreement. So if you were counting on in the UK, if we don't have Europe, we'll just start trading a ton with the United States. You have to do the details and sort that out. So
yeah, that's a good point, Austin.
In the next 2 years, I think there's going to be a lot of stuff that has to be worked out that's going to be somewhat difficult.
Yeah, but Simon, you know, you brought up the actual goods and services we're talking about, and some of them, like pharmaceuticals, like arms, you don't think it'll be that difficult?
Look, there are very few countries in the world that produce very sophisticated armaments. Britain and France are two of them. Obviously, the U.S. is a very big one, the biggest in the world.
So everybody's going to want to do that trade.
Everyone's going to want to do that trade, and it will still go out there. Pharmaceuticals, they're under patent. You know, when you've got a pharmaceutical, people want it because they want to get well if they need it or they want to live. And then we've also got the banking services, which at sometimes is the biggest in the world. And I don't see people moving away from London. If you want to set up a bank, you could set one up in a cornfield in the middle of Kansas, right? But, you know, there are no other banks there. There are no other people there that are specialized in doing, like,
you want to go where the bankers are, where the people who have money are, like London.
You don't run away.
That's a theory. I would just caution you that theory may not prove correct because there are already existing major financial centers, especially New York, but also in Asia. If you look at Singapore and you look at other places.
But we're in the Eurozone. We're in the Eurozone. Let's talk about where the banks might move people in the Eurozone. Are they going to move to Germany, Austin? Are they going to move to Ireland?
Yes.
What's your take?
Well, some within, there's a lot of banking services within the EU that they will require to take place within the EU. So there will be some loss just because the EU, this is the kind of tantrum in reverse that I'm talking about. The EU, they're going to be mad, and they're going to say, you just, you know, pushed us off and shoved us in the face. Well, we're going to show you, we're going to have rules that say you can't use a London bank for XYZ EU transaction. For the non-EU part, there'll probably be some flight to Switzerland, and there'll probably be some flight to New York.
Mr. Goolsbee, Switzerland, why would they go to Switzerland or New York? Because neither of those are in the EU, and they're not going to be there. If I want to do a foreign exchange, any deal, anywhere in the world, I want to do it in the UK. That's where the sophistication for that stuff is.
But if the laws are not supporting that.
Now.
Yes, it has been for 2 centuries.
True now.
But it's been for 200 years.
It may have been true for centuries. I'm not saying that we will wake up in 3 months and look out and say, what happened to the financial sector of London? That will not happen. They're going to remain a very strong financial sector. But there are going to be numerous segments of the market who a question mark has been put on London, and you will start to see some activity drifting away. The EU activity will drift to EU-based things, and some of the non-EU activity will drift to Switzerland and to New York.
Frankfurt, too.
Yeah. Austin, let me ask you, because Trump is at Turnberry in Scotland, does this play to Trump?
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. which I think is interesting because there is other news, you know, right now, Cheryl Casoni, and I think it's interesting what Bernie Sanders has done in the last couple of hours while Trump was speaking from Turnberry.
Bernie Sanders now coming out and saying that he will indeed vote for Hillary Clinton. And this is what the Democratic Party has been looking for, is for Sanders to, quote unquote, step aside, move out of the way, because his supporters are key to her. If he loses, if Trump loses those Sanders supporters, that's a win for him and a loss for Hillary, and the DNC does not want that.
Yeah, and the Clinton campaign, never underestimate. She's got 10 times the staff that Donald Trump does, and a whole host of advisors. They are very, in the words of Elizabeth Warren, don't screw this up. Like, they're very aware of what's going on in Britain and here, and they will craft a message that kind of that matches how people feel. You watch it.
Austin, do you expect a recession in the U.S. In the next year?
In the U.S., I hope not. Definitely not 50%, but you cannot rule it out.
And what about Europe? What about the EU?
In Europe, I think they will have a recession. I don't even know that they ever got out of the recession that they were in before.
Right.